I'm Nancy Knowles, and I'm going to talk today with Jim Benton, who is a faculty member at Eastern Oregon University and director of the Integrated Studies program.
Well, I'm the
Ish.
instructor. I'm in
Okay,
the, what is the other title? I sort of have I'm on the Integrative Studies Faculty Council.
excellent.
Right.
Okay, great. And also a published poet with one book published
One
and
book,
one in the hopper ready to
correct.
move out. Okay, great. So, what some students at Eastern may not know about Jim is he also used to be a private investigator, and so that's what our conversation today will be about.
Okay,
So, I have a few questions to ask, and
ask
then,
away.
okay, super. So, can you talk about your background in private investigation?
Background. Well, okay, I started out as a bill collector in 1970, and after I got out of the Navy, I figured it was a lot safer to work in an office just as a bill collector. I did that for like 17 years hardcore collection agencies. Um, At a certain point, I ended up at American Savings in Stockton, California, in their credit card division, and a series of quick hops and skips. I went from um, collector to fraud investigator to security manager.
Wow.
We did that for about 2.5 years, and then when they sold the credit cards off, I decided, this investigations thing is kind of cool. So I just got my private investigator's license and went into business for myself. I did that for 4 years and then worked for another 10 for a larger company in Sacramento.
And what kind of company was that? Was
Oh,
it
it's
like
just a private investigation firm.
okay, and did they handle primarily insurance claims?
Primarily,
Okay.
yeah. But I also did mortgage fraud, bankruptcy fraud. We
Oh,
did fraudulent auto theft claims.
wow.
Um, let's see, missing persons. A lot of it was workers' compensation insurance claims.
Okay. Okay. Super. And so you kind of shared the trajectory of your career,
Right.
but what interested you about going into private investigation?
Well, maybe it was an inflated sense of social justice.
I like that.
Right. Um, as a bill collector, it was a question of finding people that didn't want to pay their bills
Hmm.
until I realized it wasn't so much that they didn't want to, but they couldn't, and which is a
Sure.
fundamental difference.
Yes.
Um, I don't like liars,
Hmm.
and so the thought of holding liars accountable
Hmm.
appealed to me. Um, Thieves and liars, chasing down thieves and liars. But the whole thing started with becoming good at locating people.
So you had a skill
Hmm.
that then I'm sure was enjoyable to practice.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh?
I mean, it was fun.
Uh-huh.
It was fun. I get somebody on the phone. I say, "Hi, this is me," and they go, "How did you find me?" And there's a certain satisfaction in being able to tell them it's my job.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. Well, what techniques and skills did you develop that were important to doing private investigation well?
Um, yeah, asking questions,
Mm-hmm.
curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that, well, in terms of locating people, realizing that everybody is somewhere and somebody knows where that is.
Wow.
And so the question is finding who it is that knows and just asking. There's so many different ways. It became interesting to um, become familiar with the kinds of public record trails
Mm-hmm.
that we leave just
Mm-hmm.
as we go about our daily lives, the kinds of breadcrumbs that we
Uh-huh.
leave in our wake.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I became interested in the way public records are maintained, what the public records laws are, what's available to the public and why.
Mm-hmm.
And then it ended up raising interesting philosophical questions about the balance between um, a public's need to know certain things and an individual's privacy.
Mm-hmm.
So that became a real contended or contested space,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
Um, my own view was always to be ethical in
Mm-hmm.
my work,
Mm-hmm.
and to respect people's privacy, but at the same time, also realize that we live in a public society.
Right.
Our lives are to some degree public. Things like when you buy a house, there is the public has an interest in knowing that that transaction was conducted legally
Mm-hmm.
and the avoidance of fraud and
Mm-hmm.
abuse, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I always kind of traded in that contended space,
Mm-hmm.
contested space.
Mm-hmm. Good, very good. Can you talk about one memorable case?
I could talk about 5.
Great.
In the interest of time, well, one of the things I mentioned that we did a lot of fraudulent auto theft claims.
Yeah.
So those were interesting. We had one client who, through its own research, realized that if if you find a car that had been burned,
Mm-hmm.
unless there's a body in the trunk, the owner did it.
Okay.
Statistically speaking, because people don't steal cars to burn them.
Right.
They steal cars to strip them for parts, to joyride, wreck it and leave it abandoned, and so forth. But if it's burned, there's only 2 reasons. Either you're covering up evidence of a crime
Right.
that is contained within the car,
Mm-hmm.
or the owner is trying to get out from under a car payment that they can't afford,
Okay.
often for a car that is older and doesn't work very well, not worth repairing, that kind of a thing. So they would send us these claims. Somebody stole my car, and then 3 days later it turns up burnt to a crisp in a peach orchard somewhere.
Okay.
So our job was to interview the owner of the car, to gather up any police reports of the theft claim, fire reports, if the fire department responded to this black smoke in the peach orchard kind of a situation. And we would gather phone records,
Okay.
financial records,
Wow.
police reports, fire reports, any other kind of information we could find, and then lock the owner into whatever their version of the events leading up to the theft and the discovery. And then we had to account for all of the keys, because if the car was stolen,
Right.
theoretically, the owner should still have all of the keys.
Right.
If they don't, what happened to them? Right? Who else had access to the keys?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's pulling all of these things apart. We would do timelines, we'd photograph the scenes. The other thing we'd do is go to the junkyard, put on essentially a hazmat suit, respirator, and dig out all of the burnt debris from the driver's side, put it all in a box and ship it to a lab.
Yeah.
Where they would melt all of the stuff down until they found the wafers that come in the ignition.
Oh.
Right. So we have all of the ignition pieces.
Yes.
Right. And then examine them, reassemble them, examine them, sort of scope them, right, and look for evidence of non-key intrusion, things like screwdrivers jammed in there, and all that kind of damage. In the absence of that, the car started with a key. Yeah. And if we have the keys,
oops.
Yeah. QED.
Wow.
Right.
Well, how do you get hold of the financial and phone records? Do you subpoena those, or
well, that's it's entirely possible. But in all of the insurance contracts, if you look in there, the insurance contract authorizes the insurance company to demand.
I see.
And expect to receive.
Yes.
Any of this information.
And do they get it from the owner of the car?
Yeah, I would go to the owner's house, sit there in their living room with a 4-page list of questions.
Wow.
And we would go through in minute detail everything.
Wow.
Yeah. Who was where? What route did you take home? Where did you park the car? What time?
Wow.
So I was doing this in one case, and I had a stack of material, folders and things like that, sitting on the table next to me. It was a stack about that high.
Yeah.
None of it related to this particular case, but I was just interviewing and I had all my stuff in there. It was a big kind of theatrical production.
Right.
And on top of it was a VHS cassette with a label on it that said security.
Oh.
It was blank. It was just sitting there.
Okay.
And so I was talking to this guy, and at a certain point, I just sort of put my hand on it.
Uh-huh.
And I'm talking to him. I'm just like we're talking right
Right.
here.
Right.
And I said, so when we review this security tape, is there any reason why it will show a different sequence of events than what you just told me?
Oh.
And I could see him slumping. It just like this. Well, they don't even have video, do they? And he folded like a piece of cheap
Wow.
origami.
Wow.
So those kinds of
Yeah.
things, you
Yeah.
know. And sometimes I just have to ask them, did you set the car on fire?
Uh-huh.
Are you accusing me? No, I'm asking
Uh-huh.
if you did. So those kinds of
Wow.
things.
So little tricks of the trade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did 168 of those. No, I'm sorry, 162
Okay.
over the course of 16 months.
Yeah.
And the insurance company only ended up having to pay 6.
Wow.
The rest of them they were able to deny because we were able to prove
Right.
that the owner did it.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Guess the message is don't burn your car.
Don't burn your car.
It's not going to work.
Don't lie to me.
Well, one of the things that I think fascinates me about private investigation and surveillance in general is the sort of power differential between the person doing the watching and the person being watched. What do you think about that power difference? Like, how do you negotiate that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's sort of that same contested space that I was talking about, public and private interzone, right? There's overlaps there. And I think the same ethical approach applies in both of those. So we would do surveillance. My goal was to be unintrusive about it so that I wasn't disrupting people's lives that way. You know, I didn't want them to see me.
Right.
So I maintained power that way.
Yes.
All right. But what's interesting is I have to go where they're going.
Right.
Right. So they have power over me because they're going first and I don't know anything about where they're going.
True.
Right. So there's that. They also have certain very clear rights that I can't cross. That gives them power.
Yep.
So there is a balance in there. There are certain techniques, surveillance techniques, that are effective, but they're also illegal.
Right.
And so while it would have been nice to just tape a GPS unit underneath somebody's car, it would have made my life a whole lot easier.
Right.
That's illegal.
Right.
Can't do it. Not without a warrant. And I'm not a law enforcement agency and I can't get warrants.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Okay, that's interesting.
The one thing that I can do, I can't film anybody in their when they have an expectation of privacy, a reasonable expectation of privacy. So if they're in their backyard, and their backyard is not visible from some other public space, I can't film through a knothole or look over the fence or anything like that. If they're in their living room, I can't film through their window.
Okay.
Right? So, yeah, if you have a reasonable expectation of privacy, I can't go there. On the other hand, if you're walking down the middle of Main Street, I can film all day long. Right? So.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, this maybe gets at my next question, which is what boundaries on observation are important to democracy and why? Do you think privacy do you think democracy requires privacy or some level of privacy, and if so?
Yeah, I think it does. It's a tough thing. I think we're in a period of time right now where we are hypersensitive to individual privacy at the risk of public safety in some respects.
Right.
And I'm not talking about terrorism necessarily. What I am talking about, though, is that corruption happens in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
It happens in secret.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens if there are rules that prevent um, the public
Mm-hmm.
from getting at those nefarious behaviors.
Sure.
So I get it an awful lot. Well, I don't want my personal information
Yeah.
revealed.
Yeah.
Well, your home address is not necessarily personal information. I mean, yes, you can look at it as personal information in one sense, but unless you opt out, it's published in the phone book.
Right.
That's not private.
Right.
That's wildly public. So I never felt like I was doing anything wrong by finding out where somebody lives.
Right.
Right? That in itself is not an intrusion. Now, if I go to their house and drill a hole in their wall and install a little camera,
Yeah.
then that's definitely an invasion of privacy.
Right.
And where we have an intrusion now, and it's really a gray area, is in cyberspace.
Right.
That is a huge problem, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and a huge concern. See if I can make an analogy here. It was illegal for me to tap phones.
Right.
Okay. Um, but what we do right now with things like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram
Mm-hmm.
is we just give it up. It's out there.
Right.
We voluntarily give away our mother's maiden names,
Uh-huh.
the name of our first dog
Uh-huh.
that we had when we fill out these Facebook surveys. Hey, just fill out these little 10 things. Well, what those surveys are the kinds of questions that you provide as security questions for your
Sure.
credit card account.
Yeah.
So we're giving it away.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and look at my 3 kids.
Uh-huh.
So we got pictures of our children out there for the wide open public to go, that's a cute little girl. Maybe I'll just hunt this person down. Where do they live? We've told people.
Right. Right.
Our habits and all of those kinds of things. So it's a really evolving gray area.
Uh-huh. Absolutely.
It makes it hard to navigate those. Oh, well, here I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
We were doing a workers' compensation claim.
Yeah.
Guy said he fell off a roof at a construction site, couldn't work, this, that, and the other thing. Well, this is a little dated, but he had a MySpace account that showed him training for mixed martial arts.
Oh, oops.
Oops. and playing with guns, big 50 caliber guns at a gun range. Ha ha ha. So they sent me out there to accuse him of fraud.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Uh-huh. Right.
So,
right.
those are the kinds of things. But I don't know, am I answering your question about privacy and democracy?
Well, I'm thinking that if we have a reasonable expectation of privacy, and it's protected by law, as it is in the sort of physical world, then we can develop ideas and test them out and take action on them without fear of being observed or pressured until we're ready to go public. So in a sense, it protects us from undue pressure of public scrutiny while we're sort of developing our thinking or devising ways that we do want to participate in our culture.
Right.
But if we feel observed and that we're not protected from observation, then some of the democracy that relies on people developing ideas and being able to speak them freely, it disintegrates.
Right. So they have laws about public records laws exempt the kinds of deliberative documents and deliberative communications that do not themselves represent official policy.
Okay,
right?
interesting.
So that there is they want to encourage open dialogue within government agencies.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Dissenting opinions.
Yeah.
Right? So that the process of developing policies can be free and open. So those kinds of things are protected from or exempted from disclosure.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
What is not exempted from disclosure is the policies themselves,
Sure.
the kinds of records that get collected in the process of doing the public's work.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what's happening now, speaking of democracy and
Mm-hmm.
privacy, is that a lot of that data that's being collected in the name of the public is then secreted away.
Right.
We don't have the same kind of access to it that we should.
Right.
Right? So the perfect example is what's happening on the EPA's website, where they're just removing references to climate change research.
Right. Right. Right.
Right? So that's a big problem.
So the balance is pretty delicate. We need privacy, but we also need access.
Right. So this is why we had all of these sunshine laws that from the 70s, and those are being gradually whittled away. Part of that started with the case of an actress by the name of Rebecca Schaefer.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Right. So she was murdered at on her doorstep by a stalker who got her address from a private investigator, an Arizona out-of-state private investigator, who went to the California Department of Motor Vehicles and asked for her address.
Wow.
And at the time, yeah.
Matter of public record.
Public record.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, that shut that down immediately.
Right.
And I think rightly so.
Yeah.
But then it also created a cascade effect of what else should we lock down?
Right.
What else should we lock down? And we ended up making it more difficult to uncover the kinds of behaviors, breadcrumbs, that people leave in the process of committing fraud or crimes.
Right. Wow. Well, so you have all this background in this field, and now you're teaching college students and writing poetry.
Yeah.
Does any of that filter in as useful to your current life?
Yeah, because when I'm teaching, like writing 121, writing 122 in particular, we deal with research. Well,
right.
It's research. And the big lesson that comes from that is evidence. When we're looking for evidence, it comes to us out of order. It comes to us incomplete. It comes to us sometimes contradictory.
Right.
It sends us often down dead-end paths. And sometimes it opens up into irrelevant areas. So this is the way evidence happens. And it's it's something that you have to realize when you're just, researching your topic for a writing course or, sociology course. The other thing is that you have to take a look at the evidence as it exists. You have to reconcile those conflicts, right? Because this is a real thing and this is a real thing. So what narrative accounts for both of these seemingly contradictory things to both be true?
Right.
Okay. Not only that, but if this is true, how can I need to know that this is true. It might or it might not be true. Where do I go? Well, I have to find a separate source to validate that or verify it. And so we're always triangulating on the truth.
Yeah.
That way. So, this piece of data is not sufficient in and of itself to carry the force of proof.
Yes.
Right? So we have to have corroboration for these things. And the more corroboration, the more confident we can be in our conclusions. And this carries over absolutely into what I do now. There's also a kind of mindset, there's a kind of swagger that goes into this. I mean it, because if I'm out at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm going to steal the trash out of your trash can in order to find out what you're doing inside your house, right? That takes a certain amount of swagger, and it's not a natural thing. Right. You have to cultivate that. Right. So some of the things that I would do to cultivate that sense of swagger I'd take my camera and I would photograph the inside of your car. As long as it was parked on the street.
In the public. Yeah.
I would walk up and I would photograph the inside of it. I had no intention of doing anything about that. But it
Right.
was a way for me to sort of assert for my own benefit that I'm in control of this space. I'm
Uh-huh.
in control of um, this activity. I'm asserting my right to be here,
Uh-huh. Right.
right? Even if you never know about that, I'm
Right.
doing it for my benefit.
Uh-huh.
And then I'll go steal the trash and dig through it and find out that look, here's an old crack pipe.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what's going on inside that
Right.
house?
Right. Yeah.
Um, uh, on a side note, I should point out that activity of stealing the trash protected by court case after court case after
Yeah.
court case. If you put it out on the street for collection, you've given up your right to
Yeah.
your expectation of privacy.
And yet, if the homeowner looked out the window and saw you doing it, there might be some difficulty.
Yeah, well, we were doing that one night at 3 o'clock in the morning, me and my partner, and
Uh-huh.
we were 4 houses down in the shadows, kind
Uh-huh.
of digging through this stuff. And I looked up, and the owner had come out and carrying a silver pistol.
Oh no.
So we just kind of stopped and remained motionless. And I think the guy couldn't see in the shadows. There was
Okay.
just a shadow next to the house we were at,
Right.
and couldn't really tell what was going on.
Uh-huh.
And just kind of, there was this like 5 minutes of tension.
Uh-huh.
Sort of, he's going, "What's going on?"
Uh-huh.
And we're going, "Don't come any closer."
Uh-huh. So he backed off?
Yeah, he just went back inside,
All
and we
right.
finished our job, and
Uh-huh.
yeah.
That's, yeah, a little bit hairy.
Little hairy.
Yeah. Great. Well, this was really interesting to hear
Yeah.
you talk about this
Good.
past life, and I
Yeah,
really
happy to do
appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No, I think that's all for today.
Okay, great.
Thanks
Thanks
a
for
lot.
asking. I appreciate it. My pleasure. Here, let me shut this off here.